Welcome to our next Wandering Walks of Wonder adventure. Today we're headed to Abilene, Texas, and the exhibit called Frontier Texas. Frontier Texas is a world-class interactive museum and visitor center here in Abilene. It's located right in the downtown area. It is one of only a few museums in the world that feature life-size holographic figures. Visitors can meet and we will see some of the real people who lived and died on the Texas frontier, including buffalo hunters, Comanche warriors, explorers, and pioneers. We'll also experience the terror of a wolf attack, the chaos of a buffalo stampede, and the tension of a deadly card game shootout. Here in just a minute we'll see the first of the holographic image, but this talks about this area of Abilene well before the first European Americans came, with the Native Americans who once used this land for hunting, living, and food gathering purposes.
Heights. Hello. Since long, long ago, Indians have come to the banks of Comanche River, which we call the Rio Honeybee, Blue River, to camp, because it gives us water, wood, long rock cliffs to protect us from the While they were camped here, Indians used their paints to tell their stories with this paint rock. In this place are stories, some from tribes and languages long forgotten. Pictures of the old, hunting the buffalo in the time before the horse, stalking him on foot, bow and arrow. Talking to the sun, our father, asking for the buha, the medicine power that makes us strong. The paintings here, other places across the plains, were drawn to remind us of our story. We made no written words. Our stories are passed from generation to generation by word of mouth. From old to young, we tell these stories in long nights of winter. Places like this. Places that breathe with the history of our people.
Every treaty with the white men is a mistake. They will not live by their treaties. We cannot live by them. If they say where we live, where we hunt, it is not our way. If I am a man, I must be free. I cannot hunt buffalo. How will we eat? They bring cattle to the reservation, but the cattle is poor, hardly worth butchering. They bring meat, but it is rotten and crawling with maggots. We will not live like this. And they say, you must only live on this land. But the land gets smaller and smaller because the white pests keep coming. It is not as they said it would be. Many Indian and white chiefs gathered at the Medicine Lodge. I signed a treaty there. But I know now, it was also a bad treaty. Now there is no doubt, to make a treaty with the white man is weakness. For they only take and do not give. If we want to live free, there is but one path. The war path.
Heights. Though I was born in the world of the whites, I am Comanche. My life with the Nomina is everything. And the mainstay of our lives will always be the buffalo. We know this. We eat its meat fresh and also dried. The skins we use for robes and saddles and shelter. We make shields stronger than the white man's bullets. We sew as many as 15 buffalo skins together to make our teepees. The fur is woven into ropes, made into pillows. Even the buffalo's teeth become a rattle for my baby, Juana. For the Nemina, winter used to be a good time. Buffalo were in their prime in the late fall, and we stocked up for winter, and their coats were thick and their meat was fat. With each season, it grows harder to find the buffalo. Now the winter is called the time our babies cry for food. And without the buffalo, my people do not know any way to live. We can only starve, go to the reservations.
Back then, we didn't think the great buffalo herds could be wiped out. Once I saw a herd north of here that was 7 or 8 miles wide, maybe 100 miles long. There were millions of them. But with 3,000 buffalo hunters in Kansas, it didn't take long before it seemed there were more hunters than buffalo. I wanted to move south to Texas. We had heard about the Medicine Lodge Treaty reserving the Texas herd for the Indians. So we went to the commanding officer of Fort Dodge, asking what would happen to a buffalo hunter if he crossed the Canadian River into Texas to hunt. The boys, the colonel told us, if I was a buffalo hunter, I'd go with the buffalo. The government didn't outright say it, but its intention was to let us kill the buffalo, to cripple the Indians' independence. Without the buffalo, Indians would have to live on reservations, take government handouts, just to keep from starving. It was money to us, it was our livings. There was Charlie Rath and others providing supplies, myself, Bat Masterson, and Billy Dixon leading the way. We headed for Texas. And now them bunches of shaggies are smaller and smaller and further apart. I can hunt for days without seeing any buffalo. And I can't afford to keep paying them skinners if there's nothing to skin. The buffalo's what brought me and old Pete Snyder to this fine piece of Texas. Pete done well as a merchant, even as a town named after him. I figured building a cattle ranch would make a good life's work for me. Without the buffalo, this grass could provide for a lot of cattle. So I think I'm going to give that a go. I reckon it's a good thing I hung on to that money I made.
When the military first came to the Texas frontier, our mission was simply to monitor activities by all parties, Indians, settlers, and traders, without getting directly involved. In 1851, I participated in establishing a line of forts along the frontier, including Fort Phantom, just a few miles from here. It was a strange time for the military. We were under strict orders in the beginning to not interfere at all. More than once, our patrols passed Indian bands with white captives, crying and pleading for the soldiers to rescue them. Our men did some crying too, but they still weren't allowed to interfere. After the Civil War, that policy changed. Much of our success was due to the help of scouts like Jim Ned and Black Beaver, who were Delaware Indians. We also met on friendly terms with many Comanche leaders, including Buffalo Hump and Sanako, leader of a Comanche tribe called the Penateca, or the Honey Eaters. Later, Sanako decided to fight us, and eventually government soldiers killed him up on the Pease River.
Many former Union officers on the frontier never made the mental adjustment from the Civil War to the Indian service, and attempted to counter the Indians' hit-and-run tactics with the same procedures they had used against Confederates. This failure to adapt ultimately led to General Custer's disaster at the Little Bighorn. The 1871 campaigns taught me to think Indian, which meant to attack without warning or offering a chance for surrender, and to kill whoever happened to get in the way. I would turn their own methods against them and hit them where they were the most vulnerable, families and their possessions. This is exactly what the Indians had been doing to the whites. The loss of the Indians' Paladero Canyon camp meant the loss of their safe haven and all of their winter supplies, which we destroyed. We captured more than 1,400 Indian ponies, which we later slaughtered to prevent them from returning to the Indians. Casualties were light in the engagement, but without sufficient mounts or supplies, the tribes could not hold out over winter, so they returned to the reservation in Fort Sill. This battle represented the Southern Plains Indians' last effort at military resistance against the whites. In 1879, up in Colorado, I was tasked with moving the Ute Indians to close a reservation and to do it without force and without official approval. With my troops ready to enforce my edicts, I met with a delegation of the Indians who were carrying arms and in a foul mood, denouncing the whites for taking Indian land. With calm but firm determination, I told them it is not necessary for me to stay here any longer, and that they could settle this matter by discussion amongst themselves. All I wanted to know was whether they would go or not. I told them to send for me when they had arrived at a conclusion. Through determination, backed by military strength, the crisis was settled peacefully, despite a situation where one wrong move could have triggered a major battle.
I'll tell you what, there was nothing worse than a night stampede. We all went through it at one time or another. When a big electrical storm would roll in on your herd at night, you could see the electricity glowing green on the cattle's horns and the horse's ears. And when the cattle get nervous, anything can set them running, charging blind across the prairie. So all you can do is try to ride faster. And hope your horse doesn't trip in a prairie dog hole. You're riding hell for leather. And all you can see is the sparks from your horse's hooves striking the rocks. And if you're lucky, you get in front and you turn the leaders back into the herd so that they all begin to slow down in the middle. A whole night of that, and you're so tired you can hardly sit a saddle. Come first light, you start them heading back to the trail, just hoping all of your friends are still alive. You haven't lost a lot of cattle.
In 1856, my stepbrother Wes Sheik and I partnered together in a contract with Mr. Claiborne Varney to take his herd of about 430 head, mostly cows, and keep them on shares for 10 years. We could graze them wherever we wanted, and for our pay, we got every fourth calf that was dropped. Over time, we drifted those cows from the Waco area northwest to the Brazos Valley, where we grazed them for a good while. At first, there was no market for calves, so I began freighting, while Wes remained with the herd. Hauling freight allowed me to be in the open country, where I felt most at home. When I was about 22 years old, I met a merchant, whip-smart cowman named Mr. Oliver Lowe, who at the time was more than 20 years my senior. We went into business together after the war, trailing cattle to buyers out west, and mainly supplying beef to the government for the new Apache reservations. In 1866, Oliver and I combined our herds and drove about 2,000 head to Fort Sumner in New Mexico Territory. We lost over 400 head across the Brazos breeding yard. Oliver took the beef that didn't sell at Fort Sumner and pushed them on to Denver, while I went back home to round up the next herd.
Outlaws and Indians were a danger wherever you went. Families in the region sometimes had to ford up for mutual protection. In one fight with Comanches on the Double Mountain Fork of the Brazos, I was shot in the belly with an arrow. One of my pals killed and scalped the warrior who got me. That arrow was stuck in me so hard, my brothers broke the shaft off trying to pull it out. It looked like I was going to die, but I didn't. About 15 years later, I was in Kansas City. A surgeon cut that steel arrow from me. In fact, I still have the arrowhead, but it sure does feel a lot better on the outside of my belly than it did on the inside.
So feel free to wander around and check out the other people sites right here in Fort Griffin. You'll find Rick Johnson, visit Carter Clinton, and over there in the beehive saloon, you can belly up at the bar and watch history and nature. Just be back here in a few minutes for the next show.
Welcome to the Beehive Saloon. I'm just filling in here for Dutch. He's eating over at Skeeter's tent. Name's Pat Garrett. Gonna get right to it. I guess I'm best known for shooting Billy the Kid. But lots of things happened before me and Billy met in that pitch black room where I had about 2 seconds to kill Billy before he killed me first. So that's what I did. I come to Texas from Alabama after the Civil War. I'd done a bit of drifting. Lots of us did. Those of us who made it to this old Texas frontier were a rough lot, I guess. Lived off Mother Nature, and sometimes she was a stingy mama, and she made you rough. Spent lots of nights here at the old Beehive, just below Fort Griffin. And Wyatt Earp, Doc Holliday spent a lot of time here too, playing cards with cowboys and buffalo hunters, soldiers from Griffin. But back then, I was a buffalo hunter, you know? You've seen those old Sharps buffalo guns like I used to shoot buffs for the Skinners. You know? I come down from Dodge City. I hunted all over this country. And I could tell you some scary stories about how the Comanches chased us hunters back into Wrath City, Griffin now and then, but most folks just want to hear about Billy the Kid. Well, you'll likely hear plenty of versions of this story, but I'm the man who lived it. So, let me get on to it. Well, it was like this. After the buffalo played out, I drifted on out to Lincoln County, New Mexico. Had me a bar there, kind of like this old Beehive. Well, Billy was a customer, even a friend, sort of. Nice enough fellow. He was a gun hand. Senorita sure liked him. Well, a little guy, but he weren't no wet mop. Now, he'd shoot you faster than you could say Jimmy Crack corn. But except for stealing now and then, and of course, killing all those people, didn't seem like a bad fella. Some of those folks he shot probably deserved it. Anyway, folks in New Mexico got fed up with all the fighting. They hired me as sheriff. Told me to bring in Billy, dead or alive. Well, I trailed him for a good while down to Fort Sumner. Rode up to the house of Pete Maxwell, a friend of Billy's, at night, and thought I'd slip in, see if Billy was around. Of course, I had my pistol and a shotgun, you know, like the kind they carried on the Butterfield stagecoaches. Well, it was pitch black inside the adobe house. And I heard a bed creak as somebody got up. And I eased the hammers back on that 10 gauge. Made tiny clicks. Of course, in that dark, quiet room, sounded like you hit a skillet on an anvil. And I could just feel a gun pointed at me from across the room in the blackness. And a voice whispered, "Pete." I knew it was Billy. And I shot him. Shot him in the dark. He never knew who killed him. I guess that was the end of the most famous outlaw in the West. Just doing what I was hired out to do. Funny thing, I was a hero for a while after that. Even wrote a book about old Billy. But then I lost the next election for sheriff. I guess folks just wanted to be shut of rough guys like me. Wanted to be civilized. It was, what's that word? Transition time.
Mr. Carter Clinton.
The civilization took over the really fast.
Tell me after the bar. Just be back there.
3 or 4 years after Colonel Mackenzie started farming Parker and Comanches on the reservations by shooting up all the horses in the Palador. Yeah, well, those days, free and fast.
How do, folks? Snuck up kind of quiet on me, didn't you? I guess you the ones been asking around Fort Belknap about me, wanted to hear the legend of Britt Johnson and how I got my family back from the Comanches, right? Well, I'll leave the telling of that story to some of the other folks around here. I got all I can handle running my business. I suppose I can tell you about how I saw an opportunity, took it. When I got my family back, I had to find a way to support them. The Civil War was over and lots of people were coming to the frontier to settle close to the forts, and everybody needed goods home. The way I saw it, freight would be the lifeblood of the frontier. So I started my own freight business between Weatherford and Ports Richardson, Belknap, and Griffin. It was pretty tough in the first years. Plenty of folks was ready to make it hard for a black man. But right now, business is good. I got enough work that I need to get more wagons, and I got some really good men out there driving. Even if it's just a big old freight wagon behind the TV. I'm helping to change the frontier to the conversation.
Got somebody lollygagging around, better go get them down. Thought we have staff skills, we'll be passed, head inside and find a seat.
Don't think your staring's gonna bother me. If you're looking for a place to stay, I'm all full up. But if you're looking for dinner, I got a stew on the stove and plates for 20. Running a boarding house looks like hard work, don't it? And I'll tell you what, this is easy compared to my first years on the frontier. Come here from Alabama when I was 16. Me and my new husband, he weren't white. We come to this raw old Texas frontier. We were way out by ourselves. Folks got to stopping by for a meal or to spend the night. Despite I couldn't read or write, we started a cotton trading house. We prospered. Heck, we done real good. We started a ranch. And one night, a man shot my husband. Murdered him. Killed my father-in-law while he's at it. Of course, no lawman come to try and catch the outlaw. Would have been a 100-mile ride, and nobody cared enough to do that. My goodness, Tom, it was hard then. There was just a few families scattered in that wilderness between the Clear Fork and the Brazos. We mostly lived in dugouts, just holes in the ground. Sometimes picket houses with dirt floors. When the men folks away, women and children left alone, it was up to us to protect ourselves from Indians and outlaws. I remarried a military man, a lieutenant. Well, he went out to check on our horses one day and just never come back. I suppose the Indians or the outlaws got him. One as bad as the other. No. My outlaws were worse. You couldn't tell they was bad just by looking.
On the other side of the street,
Well, the Butterfield stage got to come by my place, and I done real good by that trade. Married again, too. An Irish cowboy. He was a funny man. Killed him, too, right out in our pasture. I suppose the worst thing ever happened to me was being captured by Indians. They was Kiowa mostly, led by this fella named Sunboy, coming a big raid. They killed my daughter Susanna and her baby boy. Took me, my 13-year-old boy, my
two granddaughters, all you Billy. Oh boy. Hold the stick. Billy before the bear got started. Poor Billy, she was just a little girl. Calm down. Really. It ran a lot. Mom was still away before you. One has never ceased.